She was homeless and starving. One small gift changed everything. She sat alone on the freezing sidewalk, invisible to the world, her stomach empty, her eyes filled with silent pain. No one noticed her. No one cared, until one moment changed her life forever. If this story touches your heart even a little, please give it a like and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you saw her on that street? Her name was Emily. Just 3 years ago, she was sitting in a college lecture hall, notebook in hand, eyes filled with dreams. She had always been a quiet but determined soul, raised by loving parents in a small town where neighbors knew each other by name and doors were rarely locked. Her childhood wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Her mom was a nurse, her dad a mechanic. They didn't have much, but they gave her everything they could. They believed in her, believed she was destined for something bigger. Emily worked hard to prove them right. She got a scholarship to a state university and became the first in her family to go to college. For a while, everything seemed like it was falling into place. She made friends, got good grades, and even dreamed of becoming a social worker, someone who could help others who had gone through hardship. It wasn't just a career for her, it was a calling. But life, as it often does, took a cruel and unexpected turn. It started with a late-night phone call during her sophomore year. Her hands trembled as she answered. On the other end was a voice from a hospital in her hometown, calm but heavy, delivering news that shattered her world. Both her parents had been in a car accident. Her mother died on the scene. Her father held on for 3 more days before letting go. Emily didn't cry right away. She just went numb. The pain didn't hit all at once. It crept in slowly, like a tide rising until it was too deep to stand in. The funeral was a blur of faces and flowers and condolences. When it was over, she returned to college, but she wasn't the same. Her grades slipped. She stopped going out. Depression took hold of her like a heavy blanket she couldn't shake off. And then came the financial burden. Her scholarship covered tuition, but not housing. Her parents' death left her with debts, medical bills, funeral costs, and no safety net. The small house she grew up in was sold to cover what they owed. She tried to work part-time jobs, but between grief and exhaustion, she couldn't keep them for long. One by one, her lifelines were cut. By the end of the semester, she had to drop out. She stayed with a college friend for a while, sleeping on a couch, promising it was only temporary. But her friend's lease ended and she moved out of state. With nowhere to go, Emily wandered. She tried staying in shelters, but they were overcrowded and unsafe. At one, a man tried to steal her backpack while she slept. After that, she stopped going. She felt more secure sleeping near public buildings, banks, churches, or in the shadows of busy downtown blocks. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. It's easy for people to assume the worst about the homeless, that they must be addicted, lazy, dangerous, or dishonest. But Emily didn't drink. She didn't use drugs. She didn't even ask for money unless she absolutely had to. Her cardboard sign simply read, "Hungry and alone. Anything helps." Sometimes people gave her food. Sometimes they just looked away. But most of the time, they acted like she didn't exist. She'd sit on the sidewalk, shivering in thin clothes, her body growing weaker with every passing day. She tried to remain hopeful, repeating to herself the words her mother once told her. No matter how dark it gets, there's always light waiting to break through. She clung to that hope, even as her body grew thinner, her cheeks hollowed, and her spirit dimmed. She still had her journal, a worn-out notebook filled with doodles and diary entries. It was the only thing she saved from her college days. On some nights, under the pale glow of a street lamp, she'd write letters to her parents. She'd tell them how lost she felt, how scared, how tired, and how she was trying, really trying, not to give up. But hope doesn't fill an empty stomach, and courage can't keep you warm at night. The worst part wasn't the cold or the hunger, it was the invisibility. The way people stepped over her like she was trash, the way no one looked into her eyes anymore. The way she stopped recognizing herself in reflections, just another forgotten face in a city that never paused to care. She used to have dreams. Now, she just had days to survive. And still, somewhere deep inside, a flicker of belief remained that someone someday might see her. Really see her. Not as a problem or a failure, but as a human being worthy of kindness. She just didn't know that moment was closer than she thought. Every morning was a battle Emily never signed up for. As the first light filtered through the buildings and the early commuters bustled past, she'd open her eyes slowly, her back sore from the concrete, her limbs stiff from the cold. She didn't have a blanket, just a threadbare hoodie she pulled tight around her shoulders at night. The thin foam mat she once found near a dumpster had been stolen weeks ago. Now it was just her, the sidewalk and the cardboard sign that served as both her voice and her shield. Hunger gnawed at her constantly. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It had become a part of her. Her ribs peeked out through her shirt. Her cheeks were sunken, lips cracked from the wind. Some days she got lucky. A kind soul would hand her a sandwich, or someone would place a few bills in the cup beside her. But most days, luck stayed away. People walked around her like she was an obstacle, never making eye contact. Their feet moved faster when they passed, as if her pain might be contagious. One rainy morning, soaked and shaking, she saw a little girl drop a $1 bill into her cup. The child smiled, her eyes full of innocent kindness. Her mother, however, scolded her, pulling her away quickly. Emily didn't blame her. Most people weren't cruel. They were just afraid or maybe overwhelmed. Life was hard for everyone. She knew that, but it still hurt to be treated like a ghost. She tried to stay in safe public areas, places with cameras, lights, and foot traffic. She avoided alleyways and underpasses, where danger lurked in the shadows. One night, a man had followed her from a bus stop, whispering things that made her heart race. She hid in a convenience store until he left. Since then, she'd learned how to move silently, how to disappear when needed, how to read people's intentions in their eyes. There were days when she considered going to a shelter again, but the memory of that night haunted her. The night she woke up to someone tugging at her backpack, whispering threats while others pretended to sleep. She'd fought him off, barely. After that, she chose the streets. At least there, she could see the danger coming. Food was always a gamble. Trash cans behind restaurants sometimes held half-eaten burgers or fries. She learned to check them before the sun came up, before the city sanitation trucks arrived. Once, she found a sealed protein bar still within date. She cried when she ate it, not just from hunger but from gratitude. And yet, even in her worst moments, Emily never stopped being human. She noticed others. There was an older man who limped and carried a Bible. He always nodded at her and once gave her half his muffin. There was a pregnant woman she saw only once, clutching her belly, her eyes wide with fear. Emily had approached her and handed her the only granola bar she had left. They didn't exchange words, just a quiet understanding. She also had moments of shame she couldn't shake. The time she took a half-eaten hot dog from a bench before the owner returned. The time she asked a man for $1 and he yelled at her to get a job. She wanted to scream back, "I had one, I had a future." But she stayed silent, swallowing the lump in her throat, holding her head low. She wasn't begging because she wanted to. She was doing it to survive. One evening, she sat outside a bakery as the scent of fresh bread filled the air. Her stomach growled, but she didn't have the energy to move. Her eyes closed, her body shivering. A young couple walked past, laughing, holding warm drinks. The girl glanced at her and then looked away quickly. Emily didn't blame her, but it stung anyway. She wanted to disappear, but then something unexpected happened. A little boy broke free from his mother's hand and ran over to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small squished cookie wrapped in plastic. "I saved it from school," he said shyly. "It's chocolate chip." Before she could speak, he turned and ran back. The mother mouthed sorry, but Emily just smiled through tears, clutching the cookie like it was a treasure. In that moment, she felt seen. Not pitied, just seen. The emotional weight of those days pressed down hard. She thought of her parents. Often, she wondered what they'd think if they saw her now. Would they be disappointed? Heartbroken? Would they blame her for not holding on tighter to the life they tried so hard to give her? Some nights, the thoughts became too much. She'd sit behind the old church steps and cry silently, the kind of crying that leaves you gasping for breath. She'd pray, not for miracles, but for strength. "Just one more day," she'd whisper, Let me make it through one more day. But even in the darkness, there was something unexplainable inside her that refused to die. A spark, a quiet defiance, a belief, no matter how faint, that this wasn't the end of her story. She didn't know when or how, but something told her her life could change. That somewhere, someone out there might offer more than spare change. That just maybe there was still kindness left in the world. She didn't know his name yet. Didn't know that one conversation, one meal, and one envelope would be the beginning of everything she'd been hoping for, but she was about to find out. It was just another cold, bustling morning in the city. Emily sat on her usual spot outside a small cafe, clutching her jacket tightly around her shoulders, the wind biting at her skin. She had grown used to the chill in her bones. The cold wasn't just something that came with the season, but something that had settled deep inside her. Her stomach ached from hunger, and her eyes, once bright with hope, were now dull from exhaustion. She had learned to fade into the background, a shadow among the crowd. That day was different. A man walked past her, dressed casually, carrying a briefcase. His face was focused, his eyes scanning the crowd, but then he slowed. He stopped, and then he turned back. Emily felt a flicker of hope, but she quickly suppressed it. People didn't stop for her. They never did. He came closer, and his eyes met hers. He looked at her not with pity, but with something different, something rare. He saw her, truly saw her. He knelt down, not a foot away from her, his voice gentle but clear. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone soft yet firm. Emily froze for a moment, stunned by the simple question. She wasn't used to people asking. Most just ignored her, or sometimes they hurried away, afraid to make eye contact. But this man, this stranger, wasn't afraid. He was kind. "I'm fine," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know how to respond. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days, let alone someone who cared enough to ask. "I don't think you are," he said, his eyes scanning her face, seeing the weariness, the exhaustion. "I'm Daniel," he added. "I'm going to get you something to eat. Come with me." She wanted to say no, to stay in her corner where she was invisible, safe in her anonymity. But something about him, his calm and genuine presence, made her stand up. Maybe it was the hunger, or maybe it was the unexpected kindness that stirred something deep inside her, a flicker of hope that she hadn't felt in so long. They walked into the cafe together, and Daniel ordered 2 steaming bowls of soup, fresh bread, and hot coffee. Emily sat at a corner table, almost in disbelief. It had been so long since she'd sat inside somewhere warm, so long since she'd had a meal she didn't have to scavenge for. The food felt like heaven, rich, comforting, and warm. The kind of meal that makes you feel human again. As she ate, Daniel listened. She didn't know why, but she found herself opening up to him. She told him about her parents, about her life before the streets, and how she had ended up here. She spoke of the loneliness, the fear, and the hopelessness that had slowly consumed her. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix her. He just listened. And in his listening, Emily felt heard for the first time in years. When they finished eating, Daniel looked at her with kindness and understanding, not pity. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He slid it across the table toward her. "I know this won't fix everything," he said gently. "But maybe it will give you a chance to start again, to get the rest you need, to rebuild." Emily stared at the envelope. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was $500 in cash, along with a handwritten note. "Find a room. Take care of yourself. You're not invisible. You deserve a fresh start." Tears filled her eyes, unbidden, as she clutched the envelope close to her chest. She had never expected something like this. The kindness, the generosity. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it represented. Someone believed in her, someone cared. The world hadn't completely forgotten her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. She couldn't say much more, the words tangled in her throat. Daniel simply nodded, his smile gentle. "Take care of yourself, Emily," he said. "You've got this." Emily's world shifted the moment she left that cafe. She didn't know what to do with the envelope at first, what she should buy, where she should go. but something inside her clicked. She wasn't just going to survive. She was going to fight back. She was going to take this gift, this second chance, and build something from it. She used part of the money to rent a small room at a modest motel. Nothing fancy, but it was safe. It was hers. For the first time in months, she had a bed to sleep in, a place to lock the door and rest without fear. The next day, she used the rest to buy a hot meal, some clean clothes, and a warm coat. She finally felt the comfort of warmth, of nourishment, not just for her body, but for her soul. For the first time in so long, she didn't feel like she was a burden. She felt human again. But Emily wasn't the kind of person to just take and take without giving back. Even before all of this, she had always believed in kindness. The few dollars she had left, she spent on a small donation to a women's shelter. She signed up for job search assistance and worked through the nights, filling out applications and preparing her resume. It was slow at first, and there were many nights when she doubted herself, but she pressed on. Weeks passed. Then a breakthrough. She landed a part-time job at a local diner waiting tables. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. She was able to save a little money every week, little by little, until she finally had enough to move into a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, just a tiny space with a bed, a table, and a few boxes of belongings she'd managed to keep. But it was hers, and that was enough. Slowly, Emily rebuilt her life. She volunteered at the same women's shelter she'd donated to, sharing her story with others who had found themselves in the same dark place she once had. She didn't have all the answers, but she had hope, and sometimes that's all someone needs. 2 years later, she walked into that same cafe where Daniel had first found her. It was as if she had come full circle. She was different now, not just in her appearance, but in the way she carried herself. She was stronger, more confident, and filled with gratitude for the chance she had been given. She wasn't invisible anymore. She had a purpose. One chilly afternoon, Emily was walking down the street on her way to the shelter when she saw a young girl sitting alone on the corner. She was holding a cardboard sign, her small face tired, her eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, Emily approached her. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling down beside the girl. "Are you okay?" The girl looked up, startled, but then relaxed slightly. "I'm hungry," she whispered, "and scared." Emily smiled gently, taking her hand. "I know exactly how you feel. I was once where you are." Emily sat beside the girl, her voice calm and kind. She told her about the struggle she had faced, how hopeless things had seemed, and how she thought she would never escape the streets. She told her about the stranger, Daniel, who had given her that second chance. "I was lucky," Emily said. "Someone believed in me. Now I want to believe in you." She gave the girl a small amount of money, enough to buy food and get to a safe place. Then Emily walked her to the shelter and made sure she had everything she needed. As Emily watched the girl walk inside, she realized that this was her purpose now, paying forward the kindness that had been shown to her. She didn't need to be saved anymore. She was the one offering a hand to someone else in need. And in that moment, Emily knew. Life had come full circle. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And that, she thought, was the greatest gift of all. Sometimes, one small act of kindness isn't small at all, it's everything. Text on screen. Be kind. Be the reason someone believes in humanity again. If you believe that kindness can change lives, give this story a like and share your thoughts in the WAM comments. Maybe your small act of kindness can change someone's world too.